Have you been thinking of a past relationship and you cannot get it out of your mind? Is it holding you back? That's what we're going to talk about today in this video. So are you replaying what happened over and over again in this relationship in your mind? And you're wondering if you should have done something different, if something was off in this relationship, and you can't seem to get past it. I hear this a lot from women who mean well. They want to have great relationships. That's probably why you're watching this video, is because you want to have a great relationship and you want to learn how to find one. And what I find over and over again is some women that have been in bad relationships before wind up taking that relationship and they replay in their mind over and over again what went wrong, what they could have done differently. And it's actually holding them back from moving forward. So it's so important to move on from a past relationship so that you're not carrying that into a current or a future relationship. And we're going to talk today about how you can do that and how you can fix this problem. If you find value in this video, I want you to subscribe and share it. You can also grab my free guide on finding a healthy relationship. I will walk you through the 3 essential steps to finding a healthy relationship, and you can find a link for that in the bottom of this video. So let's get down to the topic today. Is your relationship that you had before holding you back and stopping you from finding a good relationship now? So after a relationship ends, especially if it was a bad relationship, and maybe you don't know if it was a good or a bad relationship yet, but the relationship has ended, it's very common to think back over the relationship and try to figure out what went wrong. Did I do something wrong? Should you have done something differently, right? And we replay these things over and over in our mind. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes we need to do that because we want to move forward, right? We want to have growth and we need to see, is there something here that I need to change? And so it is good to do that sometimes. But the problem lies in, especially if you were in a bad relationship, it lies in replaying these things over and over and over again. And when there is a huge level of confusion. Confusion is actually a sign of a bad relationship. And so if the relationship ends and you're very confused about what happened, why was something wrong, should you have done something differently, and you don't really understand why you should have done something differently, you thought that you were acting okay in the relationship, you didn't know that it was a problem. If there's a lot of confusion around that, it generally is a sign that the relationship was not good anyways. But we need to dive into that a little bit more so that it doesn't hold you back from dating in the future. So sometimes what I hear from women is that they replay in their mind, what could I have done differently? So they go over every little scenario that happened in the relationship. Maybe there was a fight. Maybe there was the day that seemed like it was going well and then it turned into a bad day for some reason and they can't figure out why. And so they replay over and over in their mind what they could have done differently. And they put all of the responsibility on themselves. What could I have done differently, rather than looking at the other person's behavior and seeing if there was something there that should have been changed. So the first thing that commonly they're doing is they're replaying, what could I have done differently in this relationship? The next thing that commonly happens is they're second guessing their boundaries. This is especially true if you've been in a relationship where you've been guilted a lot, where the other person has constantly guilted you when you set a boundary or when you set a limit. They turn it around on you that that limit or that boundary is not a good one, that it's not needed, that you're being too sensitive to set that boundary or whatever it may be. And so you replay over your mind those boundaries that you tried to set and you second guess them. And you think, maybe I shouldn't have set that boundary because it caused him to, and whatever it might be, it caused him to act this way. And let me remind you that his actions and behaviors are his responsibility, okay? If you need to set a limit and a boundary in a relationship, that is what you can control. So you setting that limit is something protecting you, and it's not a reason for somebody else to guilt you. The problem here is that they didn't like the boundary, and so they're turning it around on you that it's not needed. And maybe you can think of some examples in your relationship where this has happened. But what winds up happening after the relationship is you're second guessing some of those boundaries, and you're thinking, I set this boundary in place because I thought it was needed, but maybe I shouldn't have done that. Maybe I should have just let things go so that the ship would sail easily and that there was no rocky waters or anything like that. Maybe I shouldn't have set those limits. And you replay that over and over in your head. The next thing that I hear a lot is that women then think they're being too sensitive. This is largely because they've been told that over and over again, okay? But they think, maybe I wasn't really being helpful. I thought I was being helpful in the relationship, but maybe I really wasn't. Maybe I was too much. Maybe I was giving too much. Maybe I was, making mountains out of molehills. Maybe I was too needy in the relationship. Maybe I was expecting too much of my partner. And a lot of times, this is happening when the other person is telling you those things, that you're too needy, you're too sensitive, whatever the phrase may be, to flip the blame on you, okay? Now, there are situations and instances where maybe you are asking too much of the other person, but that's part of evaluating the relationship. And so what winds up happening is after the relationship ends, you replay all these scenarios in your mind and you're trying to think, could I have done something differently? Should I have not set that boundary? Maybe I'm just being too much, or I'm believing bad things about myself because of it. Do you do that? Does any of this sound familiar of things that you do after a relationship has ended? So the result of this is that you wind up being stuck in these beliefs, you wind up being stuck in these lies, and you wind up being stuck in this old relationship, trying to figure out what went wrong, trying to put all the pieces together. And as a result, you start to believe these things that were said about you, or you believe these things that are not necessarily true. You start to believe that you're unworthy of love. You start to believe that you can't have a good relationship. You start to believe that there are no good men out there. All of these are actually lies that you are just taking from the previous relationship and saying that they are true, believing that they are true. And this is a common thing that happens. It's perfectly understandable if you were treated one way in a relationship and told these negative things about yourself that you start believing them, right? So the bad relationship is actually keeping you stuck in that and hindering you from moving forward and finding the good relationship that you really want and that you really value and that you really hope for. So how do we then fix this? How do we go from that bad relationship and move forward? Because that's ultimately what you want, is to move forward so that you can find that great relationship you've always dreamed of. The first thing you need to do is seek help for healing. This may be from a friend. Maybe you have a friend that really is very good at giving advice. Maybe they really can look at a situation objectively and help you figure out what actually went wrong and separate that out from some of the lies that you've been told or some of the things that you're believing about the relationship that aren't true. Maybe you need to see a professional counselor. Maybe you need to work with a coach so they can help you with this relationship and with moving forward after the relationship. But seeking help to heal from that relationship is the first step that's going to help you move forward from it. The next thing is you need to learn about unhealthy relationships. You need to learn what some of these signs and symptoms are. That way you will know this happened in that relationship and I'm not going to ruminate on it any longer, because now I can recognize that that was an actual problem in the relationship. That was a sign that this relationship was not a good relationship. And now that you're aware of that, you can have the mindset of, I don't want a relationship that is like that. And that will help you move on. And then the next thing you need to do is you need to separate the lies from the relationship from the truth. So we talked about maybe you were guilted. Maybe you were told that you were too much or too needy, or you expected too much of them, or whatever it may be. You need to separate out what is the lie there from what is the truth. Were you being too sensitive? Separate that out, and working with one of these people might help you to do that. But we always want to move forward, making sure we are believing the truth and making sure that we're not holding on to lies and negative things from a past relationship that are not actually true, because they will not help us find a good relationship in the future. So whenever you do these things, when you seek help to heal from that relationship, when you learn about unhealthy relationships, and when you're able to separate the lies from the truth, you now can move forward from that relationship, realizing what was wrong there, what you may need to do to fix the things that you contributed to it. And you can move forward realizing that it's not that there's no good men out there. It's not that you're too much. It's not that you're unworthy of love or any of those things. Those things are not true. And you can move forward now and find the relationship that God would have for you. And so it is so important to do this so that you don't continue to bring things from past relationships into a new relationship, or so that you don't bring them and let them tear down your self-esteem. So important to do that. And so if you enjoyed this video, I want you to subscribe to the channel, send it to somebody that you think also needs to hear it. And don't forget to grab my free guide on the 3 essential steps to finding the relationship of your dreams. And you can grab that down below this video.